Okay, I think we're on. Hi, Ruth. Thank
Hi.
you for joining me today. Thank you for joining us on Perfect Child.
Mhm.
I want to start with just sort of reading your bio real fast.
Okay.
So people who don't know you, which would be rare, but people who don't know you will now know you a little bit.
Okay.
All right. So for over 50 years, Ruth Beaglehole has been a leading voice in the call to end violence and oppression of younger human beings. As a teacher of parents, caregivers, and professionals in the practice of parenting with nonviolence, she's been a committed advocate in the human rights movement that works to protect all children. Her journey as an educator, mother, grandmother, and activist is rooted in the story of her own childhood, her understanding of early trauma, and that all human beings have the capacity to heal. So I'd like to start today talking about what does parenting with nonviolence mean?
Yes. Well, so often we don't associate the word nonviolence with parenting. You hear respectful parenting, you hear positive parenting, you hear, these more
Conscious parenting.
conscious parenting. And I have chosen this word nonviolence for some very profound, what I consider profound reasons. First of all, the philosophy of nonviolence is a philosophy that has a powerful meaning to me around just sort of really looking at the essence of being in relationship with. And in this context, what does it mean to respect and honor the core dignity of a younger human being? That's to me the essence of nonviolence. And I also have chosen this word, and I get a lot of pushback about it because I also believe that parenting is a social justice issue. And what I mean by that is that it matters. It matters
Absolutely.
how we raise our children. And it matters in terms of their lives, their individual lives, but it also matters collectively in terms of outcomes for society. And so, I mean, what a time to be talking about outcomes for society. I mean, here we really have polarization and just a sort of what feels like an overwhelming, I don't know, decay. I don't know if you can use that word, but a sort of eating away of values that I think really are values that are rooted in peace and a peaceful society and peaceful families. So that's what parenting with nonviolence is all about, is trying to create in our homes, in our communities, in our schools, and a way of being with each other that is rooted, as I've said, in a deep honoring respect. And I like the word younger human beings as well, a deep, because actually this is what we all want, you know,
Yeah.
you know,
Respect.
yeah, is respect.
Yes.
And, people, respect is a word that gets a little, yes, children have to respect adults, but I'm not talking about that demand of power over kind of respect. I'm talking
No,
about,
and when I say respect, I meant like respect for the child.
right,
And that's why I like your use of younger human beings too, because I think what we lack as adults and parents is we don't view them as younger human beings. We view them as children, and they need to be taught, and they need this and they need that. And actually, they don't. They need nurturing.
that's right.
They need support.
Right, right. Sort of they're not a different species. That's what we actually all want, core basic human needs that we all long for, the need for connection, understanding, feel felt, feel understood, feel valued, feel important, feel like we belong. This is what's so alive in all of us and so important in children.
And I feel like, when I had my daughter, and she's now 11, and we moved to Redondo Beach from Nashville, I had already discovered Waldorf education.
Yeah.
But when I moved out to Redondo Beach, nonviolent communication was very prevalent. It was what people were talking about, and your name came up a lot, Ruth Beaglehole, Ruth Beaglehole. And I do love what you teach, and I think what you bring is transformational for parents within the home. But given that, children spend a lot of time at school, what are your thoughts around how education is how it is? And then as parents,
Yeah.
how do you still maintain that peace when school is different?
Yeah, I mean, what we need is a social justice movement. We need this to be. So let me just say that the oppression, the misuse of power over children, and the oppression of children is childism. And childism is similar to racism, similar to sexism. It's a way of sort of putting together the misuse, the punishments, the power over forms of discipline that are used against children. So many of us struggle that in our homes, and many of us are in struggle with schools. I hear you. We also struggle, often we have pediatricians who will advise us to go home and just spank your 2-year-old, and I mean, we have it all around us. So, first of all, I want to say there are many wonderful leaders and teachers in schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't like to say, well, all,
Right.
they're
Right.
good.
You can't have the blanket approach.
Yeah. And yet I believe that the sort of dominant paradigm of schools, one teacher, classroom of 30, 35 kids, maybe smaller, 20 or 25. It's the herd. It's a herd mentality. We're hearing about herd immunity right now, but it's sort of like, how can a teacher in that system really provide for the, very precise, sort of needs of all children? So the institutions of teachers as an institution in classrooms, I think is basically flawed.
Right. Mm-hmm.
It's a system that's going to take a lot of work to change it. And yet there are schools now who are really embracing the emotional social development of children, who are trying very hard to bring in different ways of looking at children. So I commend those, and I think parents have a lot of power.
Yes.
To go into the school and say, you're using red, orange, green, and my child is devastated by this system. Why can we, challenge? There are other systems. Can we get rid of these things? It's so often hard to feel as parents we have the power to do that. But we do. We
absolutely do. And I think change happens with one person. If one parent just has feels the urge to speak up and get more parents on board, it's just supporting the entire structure. So why not take that one step?
I'm not saying that's easy, and I'm not saying that will always lead to change, but it certainly leads to dialogue. And some of the systems that are in schools are not okay. As I said, red, yellow, anything that publicly humiliates.
Right.
I just find it like, and I remember a granddaughter of mine, that was in, I don't know how old she was 2nd or 3rd grade, and she was on a little team at her table, And it was all about getting marbles in a jar. And if you got the most marbles, you would get, a packet of cookies or something like that. And I remember there was this one boy in their little group who just was, they were losing every time because of his behavior. And she, what can we do? What can we do? We're losing every time. We're not going to get the cookies. And of course, what did that do for him?
Right.
And
the stress.
And he was a child who was struggling, and so, just like the dynamics just sort of, but yeah.
Well, so I know that you've been educating for a while, and if there were parents out of school that were interested in changing how education is done in their school, would they be able to reach out to you? Do you do that kind of counseling with, school institutions, or do you have people under you that are able to do that as well?
Yes, I do. And I also, I have schools where I have a couple of schools where I do a parenting class a month in the school system. So that's one way of bringing parents together. It's also, I think, just, dialoguing, trying not to be in an adversarial place, but, try and see how the doors can get opened and how to dialogue. On the other hand, I have tremendous empathy for what teachers are being asked to do, even before COVID.
Yes, yes. It's a big responsibility.
Parents who can volunteer in the classroom can give some support. Parents are having to give so much support at home now with Zoom. But I'm not a person who's about to, debunk or criticize how the work of teachers. I think it's
no, I don't think so either. I think all teachers come to that profession because they love children.
And
right.
And many of them have been trained in power over systems of classroom management.
Yeah.
And so thinking about change can be a big thing. How do I do my classroom differently? Is it possible?
Yeah.
What do you do with a kid who won't co-op? These are all big
things. And I think it's a good reminder that it doesn't have to be a big sweeping change. One small thing in a classroom for the year could make a huge difference. And then maybe something small the next year. It's just having that sort of consciousness.
And I know there are classrooms that are beginning with, council, that have council, or these circles in the morning. And, honoring the connection that many teachers are trying to, bring alive between the children.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Like I said, my daughter went to a Waldorf school, and I think it was maybe second or third grade where the teacher would do counsel on Fridays, where you basically, you pull a name out of a hat, and what the name that you got, you say something beautiful about that person, what you love about that person. That to me was like, that's incredible. Everybody should do that at every meeting, even adults, before you start a business meeting, because then you actually have that intention of like love and respect.
Right.
I respect you as a human being, and your opinion matters, even if it differs from mine.
Right. And I think, people are interested in the council program. I know they can probably look up, look it up. I know LA Unified has it, so it would be worth looking up. Because I think there are many ways that council can happen. Yeah. And, I know that's an example of a support system for the overall classroom.
And it doesn't cost any money.
No. Right.
That's the beauty of that. Now, let's move on to another question that I wanted to ask. So do you think that consciousness as a parent can begin before the birth of a child, what advice would you give to a new mom or a pregnant parent to set them up for future success before they have that child?
Oh gosh. Well, I often say so to parents. So did you take Love 101 in high school? Did you take human development? No, you learned about, the girls went in one room and the boys went in the other, and you learned about puberty or something. I mean, first of all, it would be wonderful if we really put energy into supporting children and youth as they grow up about human relations, especially in high school. It's they look at me crazy when, oh, you took Love 101, tell me about that class. So many of us come to parenting with not a lot of reflection about what it's really going to be like to have a baby, and certainly not a real understanding of some of the core issues. So we do. So of course I did Lamaze, and all my grandchildren were born in water, almost all, not quite, but that whole beautiful conscious birthing process that you learn about in your prenatal classes. What about teaching about the brain, child's brain? What about teaching about this absolutely incredible process of attachment beyond breastfeeding, which is and bottle feeding if you can't breastfeed, but beyond that, to really the core essence of development? What about teaching, prenatally classes about core basic human needs, and how those needs are reflected in different ages as the baby grows?
I would have loved that. I would have really appreciated that when I was pregnant.
Right. And what about, you have this baby and these, it's the issues we all know about not getting enough sleep, and then, this whole thing that comes up about sleep training and toilet training, and educating people about the developmental clock that is inside every child, and not needing to train, not needing to.
It comes naturally. They'll come to it.
And toileting training is a time when many children are spanked for having accidents, and many children, as people start toilet training them way beyond where their brain can actually cope with managing their sphincter. So to me, these are such critical issues. And then your child becomes 2 18 months, and you have this baby, and now you have this mine, and
Yes.
lying in the supermarket and kicking their feet and not having really had any grounding to prepare you for this. That this is not, you haven't lost the beautifulness of your child. These are really important developmental steps. So I think there's so much learning that parents could do in deciding to have a child, and then during pregnancy. Yes.
Yeah, that just kind of reminds me of how our friends, I believe they are of the Jewish faith, and prior to getting married, they go to counseling, to understand. And I feel like that was so amazing that they did that. There was so much connection between these 2 individuals before they came together, right, to start a family. And man, I feel like people getting married could probably use counseling around self-care, care of each other, and care of a baby, and understanding, like you said, the baby's development. So that, because when you have a baby, all you think about is how's it coming out, and what to expect when you're expecting, and what to expect in the first couple of years, and it's all milestones that you hit, and then you're just kind of thrown into the weeds. And it's a struggle. So it's a huge struggle. But when you look at it from a developmental point of view, I think when I started thinking about it that way, I often think back, like, man, if I had another child to do it all over again, it would
Right.
be a magical experience, because um, I would be so interested in seeing how this child develops and unfolds her own wings, as opposed to like me needing to do this, that, and the other.
Just this basic fact, I think, is such an incredible thing to understand, that the baby's brain is a historical organ and use dependent. So everything that happens to that baby in utero, starting in utero, with the connection with the mother, and the vibration or of energy between the parents around the child or the family, everything is wired into the baby's brain. So the baby's nervous system is actually laid down in utero. And so that then, everything that happens after birth as well, the preschool years from in utero to, 5 years old are such critical years for the formation of the baby's brain, but also personality, what they value. So can you imagine learning that before pregnancy or while you're pregnant, how that may actually alter or stimulate your connection with the baby in utero, and also that everything that's happening is being recorded in that little baby's nervous system, in that little baby's brain. And use dependent means that loving, kindness, connecting, nurturing language and words, if that's what the baby expects, that's wired down. If the baby is used to yelling and, unkindness and even violence, that gets laid down. So this is profound. This is a profound, let me just put that in one of those airplane things.
Yes.
Because to me, if that could reality of people really understand that you're sculpting your child's brain, you are a brain sculptor. And that brain is the only organ that really can, when we're born, we're only 25% of the brain's, adult size. So
Right.
how critical it is. If my baby cries and I pick it up, that's sculpting their brain. If my baby is not sleeping enough, according to something about sleep training, should I let my baby cry themselves to sleep? And people say it works. Well, yes, they do give up crying. They stop crying because they give up. They're not going to get the attention that needs. How does that get wired in the brain? So of course, there's a lot of other things that would be great for people to learn, but I'm just pointing out that I find that such a sort of, like, can we just know that? And can
Yeah.
we support it in our parenting and as a parent of being pregnant or a parent of a newborn, how important it is, like you used the word, the nurturing, the attunement, the connection. And that is what we manifest in our touch, in our holding, in our lullabies, in our singing, in the sweetness of our voices.
So much responsibility.
Oh, well, and I think along with all of that is it's sort of critical to know that our journey as a parent, how we were raised, our baggage that we may have left over, our triggers, how important that is, that we find a nurturing space for ourselves to really do that healing work.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, after having my child, having an awareness you know, when I was triggered and really working hard at what was that? And I don't need to do that. And why am I doing that? Right. And so it's actually, like I said, she's 11 now, and it's been such a learning journey for me as I undo what was put onto me.
Right.
Right. It's having that awareness and having that willingness to understand that these don't have to belong to us.
Right. Right. And so often, you know, when people come to the support groups or parenting, my child is this, my child is that, you know, and it's like, no, that's not the place we're going to start. We have to start with ourselves. You know, we have to start with what our intention is, what our triggers are, what is the stress and the stresses that we're carrying, and how that's affecting us and our ability to be present and be nurturing. And for some of us, that's a long road of healing, a long road of healing.
Yes.
And, you know, that and you know, then we get to talk about your child and the stresses they're carrying and what's triggering for them. But every conversation we have to start. And you know, people, could you just tell me, I've tried consequences, I've tried timeout, can you just give me one other way that what I could do to my child? And you know, the idea that shifting the paradigm of discussion, moving away from that power over conversations about what I can do to make my child comply and be obedient and disciplined, moving the paradigm to thinking what's alive, what's underneath, what's really happening here. And then, of course, the big discussion for many of us is the discussion on self-regulation. What do I need to do to regulate myself? We talk about staying in the green zone in our brain, the thinking higher brain. And when we get pushed out, you know, we either get angry and, you know, screaming and threatening, or some of us actually go down and just do whatever you want, sort of give up, you know, withdraw, ignore, walk away. How do we learn this profound skill of self-regulation? And so to me, the discussion is never about discipline. Mm-hmm. It's always about creating in your family the culture around self-regulation, both for you as parents and for children. And that's looking at our own emotional baggage, what was wired into our brain, and thankful for neuroplasticity that we can actually rewire the messages in our brain.
Yeah,
so
that's the beauty of it.
I have no what's the word, this is the hardest thing I ever did in my life, was parent my children. So I have no illusions,
right,
that this seems so easy. Well, this is the hardest thing so many of us will ever do.
So is that pretty much what your support groups are? Do people sign up? Is there a membership? How, you know, is it, how do they get in on this support group thing?
So the support group is, presently I have one every Saturday morning. I'm in LA. The time is 9 to 11 on a Saturday morning. People, it says you can sign up on my mailing list, and then every week you'll get sent an email with the link. Some people have come every week because they realize they need it. Some people come when they need, you know, when they need it. That's what I offer right now. And within that, it used to be once a month, but because of Zoom, we're doing it every week. And you know, people are finding this time so stressful.
Yes.
People who are parenting and working and teaching their children as well. I mean, you know, so having a place to be held and to share and to sort of normalize with other parents how difficult that is. So if people are interested in that, I could give them my email and they could send me.
Okay, so just at our Beaglehole.
No, actually, I would give you the other one, which is parentingwithNonviolence@gmail.com.
Okay. All right, great. I mean, I'll put that down in the notes. But it's anyone can sign in, anyone can go and talk. It doesn't matter how old your child is. Okay.
And there's a request people can for a donation through PayPal.
Perfect. Perfect. That's great. All right. Moving on to our third question. You've spoken about trauma, and you've stated in a talk that you have an assumption, and that is that everyone has experienced trauma. So I would assume that we have to work through that trauma to be able to show up for our younger human beings. And that it seems like a lot of work, a lot of time commitment. Do you have any quick, easy tools that can help us to reframe our minds?
Well, first of all, you know, I think there is, I mean, there's various levels of trauma, isn't there? So, you know, I think the fact that 1 out of 4 little girls is sexually abused before she's 18 is a very, I mean, where these little girls grow up to be women. We're everywhere, you know, 6 little boys, you know. We know that, you know, a statistic that is kind of a big one for me is thinking about the fact that 40% of infants are spanked in the first years of life, you know, and that begins with a slap on the hand. And, you know, so, I mean, trauma. And then many children go on to suffer from name calling and humiliation, and we call it developmental trauma, everyday kind of developmental trauma from the way they're shamed, or, you know, the sort of threats and bribes, so very much in the dominant paradigm. And then of course we have, you know, generational trauma that may be passed on through our families. We have historical trauma, big events, you know. So this is a complex question that about trauma, and I so believe in the power of connection and support and community that can really help to transform the traumas that we might have had into experiences of new learning, experiences of new growth, you know, sometimes experiences of even careers. You know, I'm sure I've been doing this work for a long time based on, you know, what happened to me as a child. So, so do I have any quick, you know, I just finding community, finding a village, finding an empathy buddy, a friend that you can call up and say, I'm just feeling so overwhelmed right now. I'm feeling, you know, not even having to go through a deep processing of everything that ever happened to you, but just an awareness that I'm living with this sense of an edge and it's affecting my connection. And if I can have support around me, that can be part of the healing. For people who are really alone, you know, who don't have a support system, journaling, writing, being in touch with the power of your breath, you know, being in touch when you get those moments of deep breath, get, you know, meditation, find tapping, you know, that emotional freedom technique, finding ways that can support you. You know, I would say that all my parenting years, my children are nearing 50 now, but, and my, you know, what, being a active grandmother, it's very much about healing and reflection and, ooh, it's not beating one's, oh my gosh, that interaction really didn't feel that good to me. That reminded me of when I was a little girl, or when how my dad, my mother, my grandmother used to talk to me, you know, all these awarenesses. So, and primarily being held, being, you know, being in a preschool community when there's preschool again, or being held. And for men, of course, a lot of healing, men, you know, a lot of this gender messages that men have received about taking them so far away from their hearts and their feelings. You know, there's a big journey for men too. Don't minimize the journey. And yeah.
Yeah, and I think we're lucky that we have so many tools available to us. You know, as far as meditation, there's, you know, mindfulness apps, meditation apps that you can download on your phone. You can also, for tapping, I think there's tons of tapping videos on YouTube.
There's you, there's the perfect child, you know.
And there's a perfect child, yes, and we're going to be offering a lot more free content. So,
you know, these, you know, this is, if people have access to it, just hearing somebody, you know, being kind and suggesting and honoring your journey can be very much part of your healing.
yes, yes. And then there's always the support groups on Saturdays.
Yes, yeah. Support groups, there's, you know, empathy buddies, calling up a friend if you have one, you know.
And would we also say that forgiveness is a tool?
Forgiveness is a tool. Forgiveness.
You know, reflection and forgiveness. Forgive ourselves for what we did and being able to apologize if your child is old enough. You know, I had one teacher that said that she had spoken to her child really harshly, like a few years ago. And when he was like 13, she's like, remember that time we're at the sticker store and I feel really bad that I did that. And it was meaningful.
Right. And I would say the word I use is repair. Being aware when there's disconnections, you know, taking responsibility for what was alive for me that might have affected you as a child. You know, it's sometimes people say, you know, I'm sorry I yelled at you, but you know, if you had just listened to me, no, that's not
right.
And you know, they'll say at the support group, a support group doesn't go by without me saying, make a book for children about their narrative. You know, the most important thing for children is to know that what's happened to them is honored. And so, you know, whether it's a child falling down and we look at the knee and we brush it, oh, it's okay, you don't cry, nothing to cry about. That's not honor. You fell down. You were walking and you fell down. Wow, your knee hurts. Should we make a book? Should we tell the story? And then you write the story. And especially for younger children, that helps them process the event. And of course, that's a very, you know, simple one, but children who've had hospital experiences, children who've had big events happening during COVID, the story of COVID, writing these, getting a piece of paper, folding it and writing in simple language. And in all my years, I only have ever drawn stick figures, but some people do very elaborate drawings.
Right.
It's making the narrative coherent. And that's, you know, if you know the work of Daniel Siegel, he will always say that one of the most important things parents can do is to create a coherent narrative of their own life, make sense of things that happened in their own life. And then I say, make sense of things that are happening in the children's lives. Give them the benefit of a narrative, especially if there's been, you know, as you talked about earlier, trauma around.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's also, you know, a connection tool, because you've taken that time to sit down and
Right.
actually go through the timeline,
And
which
actually,
is really lovely.
on my website, there's a little video about making
Books.
empathy books. Yeah.
Yes, there is. There is. We'll have to direct people to that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you, Ruth.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
That was really lovely. And through this conversation, I can think of 5 other topics that I'd like to pull you in on. So I'll be contacting you again, and we'll put up more videos.
Oh, great. I'll be grateful. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you for the work you're doing, because that can be so valuable for parents. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.